Hello and welcome back to NoBS. Today we turn to talking about one of the biggest Democratic leaders in Congress right now, none other than Nancy Pelosi. She's one of the worst and one of the oldest politicians out there too, who has no problem lying and manipulating and doing terrible things all the time. Pelosi, of course, led the impeachment trials earlier this year. She was the spearhead behind that. She's done lots of other terrible things in her tenure, her long tenure where she's refused to really help her people in San Francisco and her constituents much at all. She's more focused on the bigger picture, attacking people like Trump, pretending she knows better than everyone else, and just in general, looking funny and acting weird and talking strange. That's Nancy Pelosi. And she recently had a pretty interesting reveal on a TV interview. She was on CNN a few days ago, and she admitted what many people had suspected for a long time. It's about a Far East nation, a very, very bad adversary of America. And this country particularly wants Joe Biden to win the presidency this year. That's being wanted for pretty obvious reasons. Like a lot of our haters would prefer a Joe Biden president over Trump. I mean, it's pretty obvious why. Not only is Biden the approved liberal kind of Democratic leader that usually gets more attention and more support in the media and the press and internationally. But in addition, Biden's weaker. Trump is a strong, confident man who will defend our country. Biden is a weak pushover. So these other countries that hate us, they're going to prefer him, of course. So that's not really surprising. What's surprising is that Pelosi will openly admit this on the news. She's like straight up saying, oh, they would prefer Biden. And it just goes to show a couple of things. I mean, first of all, how does she know that? I mean, it's pretty obvious, but she might be in contact with them. We've heard about other California politicians having contact with China, having people on their staff being China plants, like bad things like that have happened. You got to remember, California is on our west coast of America. That's the closer coast to China. There's a lot of Asian immigrants over there. So there's possible collusion there. And that brings up another thing. I mean, we've spent years talking about Russia collusion that never really happened. And they tried to pin that on Trump for a long time, like that was the worst thing in the world. But now they're colluding with China directly. They're supporting an adversary of ours, a terrible one who, not to mention, also started this plague and this pandemic and this terrible virus that is destroying the world right now. Like they started that. They've been working against us. They've sent in these spying apps like TikTok, and now they're trying to support and get Joe Biden elected as president. So without further ado, let's check out this article. It says, Nancy Pelosi admits China would prefer Joe Biden be elected. Pretty apparent, but let's go ahead and see it for ourselves. Here's the clip.
But the Chinese, what they said is China would prefer Joe Biden. Whether they do, that's their conclusion, that they would prefer Joe Biden.
She can't even talk. She's like moving her hands like it's like she doesn't want to say this. She accidentally already said it. I don't know if she's like misspeaking or letting the cat out of the bag. I think it's like kind of like a mask off moment where they're like letting their guard down, and you're seeing that they are in bed with China. And this is not too surprising, but it is an open admission. It is showing how bad things have gotten politically, where this foreign adversary, this communist nation, is supporting the Democrats and the liberals who run a lot of things in our media, and they control a lot of the press and the big tech, you know, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all these sites are in bed with this too. So it's pretty disturbing, pretty messed up. And it just goes to show why we need someone like Trump to actually win, because if we really want a bad thing to happen to this country, you think things are bad now, just wait till the Chinese take over. The article goes on and says, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi publicly admitted that she is aware of China's preferences for the elected president of the United States in this November's election. China would prefer Joe Biden, she said on CNN's State of the Union on Sunday. While Pelosi recognized that China prefers that Trump lose the November election, she claims that the threat they present is not equivalent to the interference conducted by Russia. Russia is actively 24/7 interfering in our election, she said. They did so in 2016 and they are doing so now. Pelosi took her original statements one step further with Chris Wallace on Fox News Sunday by claiming that China is not really getting involved in the presidential election. They try to blanket it with Chinese. They said preferred Biden. We don't know that, but that's what they're saying. But they're not really getting involved in the presidential election, she claimed. So very biased. I wouldn't believe a word she said. All these politicians know is lies, especially the left wingers. And that used to be something most people knew. Like, it's like lawyers, like you just expect politicians and lawyers to lie. And that's what's happening here. She's obviously trying to vilify Russia, saying they're interfering and doing this stuff 24/7. They did so in 2016. And I think that alludes to a fact that, there were a lot of countries having a dog in the race. They tried to invest and they tried to promote things and got involved, but it was not done like illegally. It wasn't like Trump colluded with these countries and asked for help. Like, they have their own agency. They did things on their own. If they happen to do something that might help Trump, that might help Biden, like, there's little we can really do about that from the outside, unless you want to start a war or something silly. But the point is, she thinks that Russia's a threat. She says it's not equivalent, but really she doesn't like Russia because they're supporting her opposition. And she says that's illegal, that's bad. And she's like, no, China's fine. China can help. They're doing whatever they want. They're not really doing anything, and according to her now, even though she admits they want Biden to win. So it's really just like, they're on the left side. China is on their side, and they're terrible. They're civil rights violators. They steal people's organs. They have internment camps. They're very racist, and they hate black people, stuff like that. Like, China is one of the worst. They disappear reporters and censor everything and all that stuff. They're a bad dictatorship/communist nation. But the left prefers that. They're going towards socialism. They're leaning towards China. They want their help. I mean, Joe Biden has a son who's worked in China. China has had Hunter Biden over there. They've given him millions of dollars. Like, China is already in bed with Joe Biden. So them wanting him to win isn't a big surprise. They're probably thinking, hey, we bought off Joe Biden's son. We can definitely buy him off. Like, we're going to get a lot of control in the country if Joe Biden wins. Obviously, that's not going to happen with Trump. As we said before, Trump is a strong, confident man. He believes in things like America first. He's not going to put other countries ahead of others. He's not in it for the money either. Like, a lot of this crap is done so that Democrats can make money and manipulate things. Like, the Clintons got rich while they were in office. Pelosi has $1 million mansion in San Francisco. Like, all these Democrats are about making money, getting rich, embezzling, like giving money to their husbands through a company like what Ilhan Omar did. AOC is getting rich off of Netflix documentaries, just like the Obamas. They're buying Martha's Vineyard places on the water, even though they claim that the oceans are rising and that there's global warming, which doesn't make sense. But that's besides the point. The Democrats are in this to make money and to take bribes and to be corrupt. Trump isn't. Trump was rich before. He's actually losing money to be president. He's actually taking a pay cut in order to save our country. I mean, God bless him for doing that. If he wasn't there, what would we be doing now? I mean, things would be insane. So that's the only hope we really have, is to stop someone like Biden like this. A statement released by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence on Friday confirmed and acknowledged that China is a threat and has an agenda for the United States election, citing the recent actions taken by the Trump administration as the prime motivator. We assess that China prefers that President Trump, whom Beijing sees as unpredictable, does not win re-election, the statement read. China has been expanding its influence efforts ahead of November 2020 to shape the policy environment in the United States, pressure political figures it views as opposed to China's interest, and deflect and counter criticism of China. Yeah, this is a big kind of propaganda thing for them. They're trying to hide the fact that they caused this pandemic that's spreading across the world. They also don't want people talking about other bad things that they do in China, like oppress the people of Hong Kong. They're taking over Hong Kong, taking away their autonomy, taking away their independence. They're doing bad things like we said. They have captured and interned those Uyghur people. That's a race within China that's being treated very poorly, like putting into internment camps and death camps and work camps and crap like that. So I really don't see how we can ignore all this, how they can act like that's okay. And then they're also supporting China, who supports Biden. I mean, that's like being supported by North Korea or some really, really bad country. Like, you're being supported by a dictatorship, one of the most dangerous ideologies in world history, killed millions. Mao has had tons of people die under him. Communism kills. Capitalism is the best. America, America, USA, USA. Sorry, now I'm getting all patriotic. But before we get too far off topic, let's get back to the story. This actually has more details on this next article. It says, White House says China is targeting U.S. election with cyber attacks. But Pelosi says threats from Russia and China are not equivalent. So this is more about that take. She's trying to defend China's meddling while also vilifying Russia's like non-meddling. Like, she's acting like it's worse or different when really you could see them as being similar. They're just going for different candidates, and they're just defending China, a terrible place. after the Office of the Director of National Intelligence issued a report Friday warning of ongoing interference activities by China, Russia, and Iran to disrupt the 2020 election. White House National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien said Sunday that China has been expanding its influence efforts, while House Speaker Nancy Pelosi claimed the actions from China and Russia are not equivalent. According to her, right? Here's the crucial quote. It says, Russia is actively 24/7 interfering in our election. They did so in 2016, as they are doing now. The American people, I believe, they should decide who the president of the United States is, not Vladimir Putin making that decision for us. So this is just a gross mischaracterization. Like, she's not really being fair and honest about what's going on. Like, Russia meddling, I don't know how much of an effect it actually has. Like, she's talking about them like posting ads on Facebook or promoting videos or something. Like, if American people are swayed by that a lot, I mean, it's really, at some point, it's your own fault. Like, if you're getting swayed by some kind of ad or fake video or whatever it may be, I mean, sure, you could blame that on Putin or Russia a little bit, but you also got to remember there's Americans voting. If they're following bad information, which I totally believe, I mean, there's a lot of bad information out there. The news is really the biggest source of that bad information. Like, I don't even know why we're worried about Russia and China influencing. Like, if anyone's spreading bad information and trying to steal this election, it's Democrats and all them running CNN, MSNBC. They're lying about the president every day. They're pushing this fake news stuff. They're cutting clips together. They're misquoting him. You know, they're trying to ambush him at the White House. They're crying about masks, like using children as shields and stuff like that. Like, that's the thing we really need to be worried about. I don't think this is actually what Nancy is really saying. Like, she's really kind of biased, obviously. She's a terrible liar, clearly. She has a proven track record of being awful. So really, yeah, the people and the voters, they do decide who the president is. That's the way our country has always been. If there's other information coming to them and it's misleading or bad, I mean, that sucks. And we could try to correct that in a way, but the whole way they've tried to blame it on Russia and Putin, it's just like an old school Cold War tactic. Like, they're trying to harp back on the America versus Russia Cold War and how we kind of like we're in a stalemate with Russia for many years because they were communist and terrible too at one point, and they still have their issues. Like, this isn't a video to defend Russia wholly and completely. They've definitely done bad things too, like how most big nations are. Like, no one really has a squeaky clean record over a long enough time period. But the point of today is Pelosi's terrible. China is supporting Biden, and there are terrible. We don't want that to happen. We don't want China to become president. That's what's going to happen under Biden. That about wraps things up. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Make sure you comment your thoughts on everything below. Also, hit that like button to get this video shared. Subscribe if you're new, and check out our second channel, NoBS News. Until next time, have a great day.